The scouting combine right around the corner, which means the NFL draft is coming. Oh, the Browns, by the way, don't have an offensive line. Nobody signed up. Coaching staff in place. We have a lot to get to. Let's get to the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara. The sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
Chubb runs, he's to the 10, 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Shabba-lubba hub.
It's gonna be sick.
Welcome, everybody. Hey, it's been a little bit, but we're back at it, man, because we have a new coaching staff. We have a new defensive coordinator, Mike Rutenberg. Monken's rolling. The staff is put together. New special teams coordinator. Thank goodness the Bubba Ventrone era is over. Byron Storer from the Packers is in town, who, by the way, in case you didn't notice, coached up 2 all-pro kick returners, one in Vegas or one with the Raiders and one with the Packers. So I'm optimistic. There's some optimism. There's a lot of concern. Make sure you're clicking subscribe to the channel, notifications on, jump in the chat. Hit us up on social. Let me know what you think, your thoughts on the Browns, all that good stuff. At Pod Browns, at AndyMC81 on X, Instagram, and TikTok, at AndyMC Sports. You're going to be wanting to make sure you're paying attention because now that the Combine's around, you know I got my Combine notebook, handwritten notes all over the place. We're going to be getting draft ready. Also, check out my articles on the Sporting News. On all my socials, at AndyMC81. The Sporting News got mock draft roundup. These analysts, they're putting some weird stuff out there. I went over it with the mock draft round. Make sure you're checking on that, the offensive line and everything. Isn't it just something that jumps out to you as a Browns fan that is only can happen in Cleveland? Is that since the 1970 merger, I wrote about this on Sporting News, since 1970, the AFL-NFL merger, no team has ever entered an offseason with every single one of their offensive line starters unsigned. Only the Browns. Now there's, Jack Conklin, can't stay on the field, gone. Ethan Postich blew out his leg, he's out, fine. Left tackle Cam Robinson, anyone pining for Cam Robinson to come back? Not really. Wyatt Teller put his note out on social that he's gone, disappointing, but I get it from a financial standpoint. We have to hope that Joe Bitonio likes the George Warhop return. Remember, he was with the Browns, and Joe Thomas talks glowingly about him. He coached up Bitonio too. Maybe George Warhop coming over with Monken can draw him back for one more year and ease Andrew Berry's mindset as far as how to build this. Because there's multiple ways to go through it, right? We're going to get to Nick Shook from NFL.com in just a moment as well. Special guest. Very excited to have Nick back on. Go over his quarterback rankings. Where did Shedeur Sanders fall? For the O-line real quick, it's a case where, and I wrote this on Sporting News, again, check it out, where you can go about this, and the Chicago Bears are the blueprint. The Chicago Bears did it. There's precedent as early as last year. You can do it. The Bears made trades, free agent signings, and drafts. Rebuilt the O-line. Made in one offseason. Made Caleb Williams look like a, I don't know, pick to a, whoa, future star, and you go in a deep playoff run. I'm not saying you do that and the Browns are all set, but it's a big part of improving the run game, which you should have under Monken. And, of course, whoever's at quarterback having more time to breathe. So you can do it. The Browns with their salary cap restrictions with Deshaun Watson probably got one big signing. Probably got one. And if it's me, I'm saying Rasheed Walker's that guy. Green Bay Packers, 26 years old. According to SpotTrack.com, going to command about $20 million. Maybe a bit more per year. You can do it. You're the salary cap guy, Barry. Figure it out, right? Get me Rasheed Walker. Boom, left tackle. You can then, if you want, trade maybe a 4th, 5th round pick for Walker Little from the Jaguars. It's another popular name coming up. Kind of more of a bit of a swing guy. He's on the outs of Jacksonville. I'd have him more as you want DeJuan Jones to be your right tackle, but he can step in if he is not healthy or gets hurt. Then you go draft, right? Maybe we got a free agent, we got a trade. You go draft with top pick. You go O tackle. Maybe you pop him in, battles with Little for that right side, DeJuan Jones. And then later, 3rd, 4th round, you go for a guard. Hopefully Whippler is healthy. Maybe you have to sign another center. But the thing is, it's there. Thing is, Andrew Berry's track record with offensive linemen so far, not good. Zach Zintner is going to be expected to go on. He was inactive for much of the season. Lots of questions and lots to get to this Browns offseason. Let me know what you think about this offensive line situation. What do you want the Browns to do in the draft in that first round? Let's bring on, it's been a minute, but he's back. Cleveland's own Nick Shook from NFL.com, around the NFL. Nick, Kent alumnus, how you doing, buddy? Glad to have you back.
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Andy. Very excited to be here.
I love it, man. You do such great work out around the NFL and on NFL.com. So for you, I wanted to start with, you put out a couple days ago, you ranked top 63 NFL quarterbacks. So that's backup, starters, all that, right? Shedeur Sanders ranked 44th.
Yep.
So now I know you're a Browns fan. Did that pain you to rank that? I don't disagree, but it's like when you feel that and then you realize, man, there's only 32 teams. It's kind of a punch in the gut.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had some teams who had 2 guys land inside of the top 32 just because I'm ranking every guy who made a single start or more in the regular season. And some guys who were backups played better than some starters elsewhere. So it's a pretty normal function of it. I always enjoy getting to the total after hand counting and being like, who all started a game? Oh, 63 different guys started a game in this league in which there's 32 starters. That's just the nature of the position. Did it pain me? No, because, doing this job for a decade now, you kind of have to leave your fandom aside. It's kind of bled the fandom from me. I also spent a year working with the team, which was a good experience. But overall, you get to this point where you lose your brown and orange colored glasses and you just see the reality for what it is. And sometimes that will upset a fan base, whether it's the Browns or the Packers or anybody else. But I'm always aiming to be honest, unbiased, and direct. And so when I ranked Shedeur 44th, I felt like it was pretty fair because he had some moments where he showed some promise. He held on the football too long. He struggled with accuracy at times. He was also very accurate at other times, like outrageously accurate. He looked like a rookie 5th round pick. And for all of the things, the handful of things that he did well, which was in increasing his propensity to scramble. He seemed like a much more willing scrambler in the last few games of the season, which helped them out offensively. He also has a ton of, work to accomplish. And a lot of that has to do with whether they're going to give him a shot to compete for the job in camp. Some say that he shouldn't. I believe that he should get a shot to compete for the job in camp, but they should also bring on another contender. Maybe that contender ends up being Deshaun Watson. I mean, you got to get something out of that contract. But ultimately, that's just where he was. He played around in the 40s when it comes to ranking. And as I sorted them all out, it felt right. So no, it didn't really pain me because look, if there's one franchise that's going to keep you honest and from a year to year with struggles and issues and their own self-inflicted wounds, it's the Cleveland Browns. And I take there's no issue with me, kind of analyzing that and just giving it to you straightforward.
Yeah. And the thing is, the Browns start so many different starting quarterbacks each year. Undoubtedly, whenever you make this list, they're popping up. They're usually near the bottom, but they're popping up all over the place.
I had that weird situation where I was like, who do I put Joe Flacco with? Ultimately, I put him with the Bengals because that's who he finished the season with. But I mentioned his 4 starts to start the year.
Boy, Dylan Gabriel. Interesting note from your list on NFL.com. You can check it out. Above Russell Wilson, just name recognition. That's all right. Above Quinn Ewers, he's terrible. Josh Johnson.
He had a good game and a half.
Yeah.
But the bad was really bad.
You know what's so funny, Nick? It's like where everybody, we always hear, right? Ooh, next year's quarterback draft class. That's the one. It's always next. Remember not too long ago, it was Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck. Woo.
Yep.
Those are the guys. They were supposed to go 1-2. Then I remember I was in Cleveland. I think it was week 3, 2 years ago, whatever. They played each other head to head. And then everyone's like, that's not great. And so it changes so quick. And that's why if you're the Browns, it's like, okay, is it better to draft a quarterback in what is looking increasingly just like a dog's breakfast outside of Fernando Mendoza? Or do you say, all right, let's try, like I mentioned in the opening, try to build out that offensive line. Shedeur Sanders, people forget, he was on a separate field, Nick, a practice field, no reps with the starters. Like in your mind, is it better to draft another guy, whoever it might be, or say, hey, Shedeur, you kind of didn't get a real shot. Let's put you in a competition with Deshaun Watson. and let's actually see what you can do when you have a proper training camp.
Yeah. So I'll talk about the Shedeur thing first, because I think that obviously he is a polarizing figure for a number of different reasons, but I feel like the discourse regarding his treatment under Kevin Stefanski is a little bit distorted in that folks forget the fact that like most 5th round picks are not given a lot of reps. Like they're developmental guys. They're guys that are at the bottom of the depth chart that you hope maybe you get something out of them. You get a Clayton Tune or something like that. You know, I mean, we could all think about Tom Brady as a 6th round pick. He wasn't on the radar until he absolutely had to be with the Patriots. So it's not like they were sabotaging him or anything like has often been claimed, for those on the internet trying to get clicks, which I see way too often, just crazy off the wall.
It wasn't sabotage, man. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't sabotage. It was a realistic treatment of a 5th round pick. And I don't necessarily think that it's entirely a real shot, but he did get like half of a season of starts. He had 7 starts in 8 games, right? So if you think about the sample size was encouraging enough to give him another shot to compete for the job. I think that's like a fair conclusion after the first season, but I've seen it online way too often. And I'll just take the moment now to be like, look, people who think that he was being sabotaged and that Kevin Stefanski lost his job because of Shedeur Sanders, those two things are not related. He was not being sabotaged. And I also, I would push back against the idea of like people wanting to play for Stefanski in Atlanta. I think they're going to do fine there. Michael Penix has his own things to work out, but I think Stefanski will do fine there. So just to get that out of the way. Now, would I draft a quarterback this year for the Browns? No, because 2 reasons. One, I don't believe in any quarterback outside of Fernando Mendoza. And frankly, for all the things that Mendoza did really well in Indiana's storybook dream-like season, and the way that he closed that game was fantastic. I can't argue with those results. I don't really know how he projects as a pro quarterback. Having watched him all year, I'm still like, I don't know. And a lot of rookie quarterbacks, their success is determined by the situation they're placed in. In the Raiders situation, I don't know if you saw them last year. That offensive line was the worst one in the league. They have no notable receivers outside. Nope. Their greatest strength in the passing game is their 2 tight ends. And once Brock Bowers got hurt and wasn't really the same for most of the year, you saw what happened there. Geno threw a career high or a league-leading total of interceptions behind a terrible offensive line. No quarterback would have been able to save them. Ashton Genty getting hit behind the line of scrimmage more routinely than any running back in the NFL. That offense didn't have a chance. So Mendoza is going to have a really tough situation ahead of him. Now, Clint Kubiak's there. That's the ideal coach quarterback pairing. We'll see what happens there. But the rest of this class, I have very little faith in. Yeah, like very ordinary. Ty Simpson from Alabama. Depending on the week that you watched him during the regular season in college football this year, either somebody thought that kid's got some stuff and he could be something in the NFL, or they're thinking he's terrible and I wouldn't spend a pick in the first 2 days on him. That's the next guy in line in this class. It's not a good class. The Browns just spent a 3rd round pick on Dylan freaking Gabriel, which I understood why he got the start over Shedeur to start, because he got the ball out on time, he minimized risk, and that's all you were looking for at quarterback. But we know his ceiling. It's very low. He doesn't have the arm strength. The mobility that we saw in college is not there in the NFL. It doesn't translate to the faster game. They essentially burned a 3rd round pick. Andrew Berry still has his job. He cannot afford to burn another pick on a quarterback when none of these quarterbacks are anywhere near convincing enough to spend that pick. So you direct that capital toward your other needs, offensive line, receiver, so on and so forth, and you build through that way. Now, does Berry have a good track record at drafting those 2 positions? No, he does not. He's quite bad at drafting receiver, and he's not very good at offensive line either, at least so far. Hopefully he can nail this draft like he did on the defensive side of the ball, though, this time around, plus Harold Fannin at tight end. You had Quinshon Judkins at running back. It was a good draft. Hopefully he does it again, but I would absolutely not draft a quarterback in this class. Just let Shedeur, Deshaun, and whoever else is out there veteran-wise battle it out and accept that you're not going to be a playoff team, but that you need this year to rebuild elsewhere to set yourself up for the next quarterback.
And to then see, is Shedeur enough? Does he show you enough over a year? I'm going to say, let's take the assumption he wins the job. Does he show you enough that he can be the guy going for, or does he answer the question of, okay, but we need to do better? Which I'm fine with.
Yeah. So here's this has nothing really to do with Shedeur, to be completely frank. But what did I just say with the Raiders? They have the worst offensive line in the NFL. You just opened the show with the fact that the Browns don't have any offensive linemen signed. The only guy that they have is DeJuan Jones. It's still under contract. Joel Bitonio, void years. They have a ton of guys that are accounting for dead cap this year because of void years, because Barry has been playing cap games for the last 4 years to fit Deshaun Watson's contract, into their cap situation. I just checked over the cap before the show started. Projected $3 million in space with 1 offensive lineman that you would project as a starter signed right now. That's really bad. And that's not really good for any quarterback, and especially a quarterback in Shedeur Sanders who does not get rid of the football quickly. It's going to set up for a bad situation. And frankly, at that point, I can understand why his supporters would be like, he's behind a terrible offensive line. If that's what they're going into right now and they don't make a lot of efforts to rebuild this, it's going to be a bad situation. So why would you throw another quarterback into that? Just let him play that out, and you try to reinforce everywhere else and just accept that this is another rebuilding year.
And here's what was so frustrating as well, not Kevin Stefanski's fault, was Andrew. And you said Andrew Berry still has his job, which, again, I'm wowed by. I guess there's something to say when you sit beside the owner all season in his box during games, you get his ear, maybe. But maybe. But the thing is, and this is Andrew Berry's fault because you bring in Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett. Well, two veterans, they take up the majority of the reps. Makes sense. Then you trade both of them, and all of a sudden you're left with 5'9" Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur. Whereas if you would have went in with the two rookies is still nuts to me, but you knock out one of those veterans, you give something. It's just, so as long as Andrew Berry doesn't sabotage the quarterback position, and hopefully Todd Monken has a little more say in that building than Kevin Stefanski did, maybe they're in a better spot. What do you make, Nick, of the Browns coaching hiring? Todd Monken, you bring in Rutenberg. I was very disappointed Schwartz is gone, but Rutenberg seems like he's well-liked. As overall, this staff rebuild led by Todd Monken.
I looked at this opening as being radioactive, because I felt like no matter who got the job, they were going to get fired in 2 years because the team is just not there. And it's going to be a very challenging job. But I think if there's any time for a guy like Todd Monken, a career coordinator, save for the time he was the Southern Miss head coach, to take a head coaching job, now is the time. In my experience working with Todd when I was with the Browns in 2019, he was the offensive coordinator. I liked it, interacting with him. He knows his stuff. He is an expert for sure. And he has the good disposition to be a solid head coach. It's and I like the staff that he's formed for the most part. It felt like they were trying to keep continuity with the Schwartz identity by going and getting Rutenberg, because he has some similar tendencies from working under Jeff Ulbrich in Atlanta, and also kind of poaching from an Atlanta defense that turned around last year and was the strength of their team under Raheem Morris as the head coach, especially in the secondary, which is where Rutenberg was operating, right? So it kind of makes sense. That's the strength of the Browns defense outside of Myles Garrett and, of course, Carson Schwarzenegger. But, like, you think about it, they love to play man coverage. They love to rely on their corners, Denzel Ward and Tyson Campbell, and the safeties that they have and everything else. So I guess you go toward that strength and try to keep some continuity in terms of approach. We'll see if that pans out. It's a big if. And then on the offensive side, you have Monken in charge of play calling and bringing over a guy from the Ravens that he has, familiarity with. George Warhop, big huge Joe Thomas guy. Yeah. Joe Thomas is a big fan of George because that's who was coaching him in his early years in Cleveland. I think that was a good get. They have lacked in the offensive line since they lost Bill Callahan, so I think that's a solid get. Replacing Boba Fentrone with anybody was an upgrade, I think, because that special teams unit was a disaster.
And he goes to the Rams. What an agent.
It's just an illustration of how the NFL is a big league and it's a small world. And that you can bounce from one job to the next, not to completely knock him as a coach, but just the performance on the field. And the way that it was characterized when he went to the Rams was hilarious to me because, of course, agents are feeding information to reporters and the reporters disseminate the information. And they were like, Ventrone considered one of the best in the NFL. And I'm like, did you watch the Browns special teams this past year? Because they were a disaster with him as the coach. So and in the whole way in which he got the job, too, was kind of weird. Getting rid of Mike Prefer out of cycle and then hiring Ventrone. There was just a weird feeling to all of that as well. So I think that, a coaching staff change and upgrades, I don't know if they're upgrades, but they're changes in multiple positions will be good for them. But again, the reason I said this is a radioactive job is because ultimately it comes down to the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. And the Browns lack in the Jimmies and the Joes, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So Todd Monken has his work cut out for him. But I do believe that they will have a more ambitious / creative approach to the offense than they have in recent years. And that's no knock on Kevin Stefanski as a play caller. I just felt like at times he got cute when they were still competitive. At other times he deferred to offensive coordinators who were or weren't cut out for the job. Ken Dorsey not cut out for the job. Tommy Rees probably his best play caller during his time there. So I think that the Browns offense with Todd Monken will find ways to be more effective on the margins, but ultimately it's going to come down to talent. That's where they're still going to struggle.
Absolutely. And that's where Andrew Berry has to earn his keep and actually hit. And again, you mentioned, okay, not good at drafting offensive line or wide receiver or quarterback, but you still have your job after 6 years.
Because you nailed one draft. And don't forget, You signed Malik Collins.
Yeah, yes. And Andre Schmidt.
And the kicker, the UFL kicker.
Kicker, doggone it. Absolutely. Last one for you here. Mock drafts all over the place. Really, as we know, it's fun. But until free agency comes, you can't really start to narrow things down because that's when team needs start to get filled in. Then you can start to put the puzzle pieces in place. But I put out on a Sporting News earlier kind of a mock draft roundup. And Nick, we got everything from the Browns taking Caleb Downs at 6 and avoiding the offense to 2 offensive linemen in the first round to a receiver. Where would you go? It depends who goes in front of you, of course, but in general, if you had your position appeal for 6 and 24 in the first round, where does Nick Shook go?
Andy, I'm old enough to remember when the Browns avoided Ohio State players like the plague.
Oh, me too.
And they even went and drafted Michigan guys like Braylon Edwards. Oh. And over the last 8 years, they have reversed course in that, starting with John Dorsey drafting Denzel Ward in 2018. And for good reason. If you took Caleb Downs, you are taking the best player available. And I would not have an issue with that because he is a game-changing player. He's going to be a great safety in the NFL. Player. I also have heard, folks projecting receiver. And somebody asked me the other day, would you take Carnell Tate at 6? And I was like, that's too high. And I'm not all about like draft pick value necessarily. I'm more about how do you address your team needs, or you just go best player available. But I think that's too high. I would have liked to see them get him in the teens. Because I think he's the best contested catch maker in college football coming out of the draft this year.
Right.
Like that's his greatest skill. And I think that would immediately translate in the NFL. I also could worry that like getting excited by the shiny toy, convinces you to make the wrong pick too early. And because you have need at receiver, you're going to look at that and be like, oh, well, we really need a receiver and this guy's good. So let's take him 6th overall. I honestly think you go best player available because you have needs. And if best player available at 6 is Caleb Downs, I'm fine with that, even if it doesn't address offensive line, because how hard is it to find an offensive lineman that's really good? You got to be convinced this guy's going to be a slam dunk to take him that high. And oftentimes they are, but there are also plenty of examples of guys who are not that good who go very high. So there's a lot of different directions in which the Browns can go right now. I usually come to a better feeling about where they might go once I go through the combine and get a good look at some of these guys and kind of dive into the class. Because while I watch a lot of college football, sorting it out right now, getting lost in the mock drafts will kind of pollute your thought process when it comes to the draft. Because look, PFF's great at a lot of things, and their mock draft generator thing is a fan favorite among many people. Cool. But I can't tell you how many texts I get that are screenshots of somebody doing the mock draft generator. And they're like, I nailed the draft. I got this guy in round 4. And I'm like, that guy's off the board in round 2. What are you doing?
He's not going.
Yeah. Again, look, the draft is a crapshoot. It's a exercise of, I guess, educated guesses and risks. And it ultimately comes down to what the Browns feel like with their player evaluation and what's most important to them. But again, if they go best player available, Caleb Downs at 6, I'll be excited for them because he's just a great player. And
if they get the avenue I laid out at the start, if you go get Rasheed Walker, free agency Packers, that's your big spend. And I got a stud left tackle who's 26 years old. And I can say, okay, I can either trade for a Walker Little to go along with DeJuan Jones or then I'm more comfortable with that. But if they just get some rotational guy in free agency, then I might have to reach. Because otherwise, like we said, it's a complete disaster. But if you get me a stud, then it all depends. And you can get your guards in the 3rd, 4th round. So you're right. It's going to be very interesting. Combine, free agency. It's laid out to be, as always, a very interesting offseason for the Browns. Nick, where can people find your stuff around the NFL, NFL.com?
NFL.com/Shook for all of my latest writing. NFL.com/QB Index for that final QB Index of the year. The 63 quarterback gargantuan piece that's like 4,000 words that took me a long time to complete. You can check that out there. You could always follow me on social media on Twitter, TikTok, at the Nick Shook. And you can check out my other podcast that I do with a couple of friends. We do football and Formula One. It's called the Gridiron Podcast. Iron is in brackets because the grid is the Formula One part. Like the racers are on the grid, and then gridiron is the football part. Terrible for SEO, but I thought it was cool time. I regret it now, but that's the name of our show. New episode just posted yesterday where we talked about the Super Bowl and the NFL going into the offseason as well as the upcoming F1 season. Find that on all your favorite podcast platforms. And lastly, if you like virtual football, I don't know if you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, I got this Kent State stuff behind me. I'm a Kent State fan. And I have Kent State in an online league with 16 people. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not lying. The year is 2030, and the Kent State Golden Flashes are the number 2 team in the country. So come watch it all on Twitch at the Nick.
Is that through like a like EA Sports, like the college football game?
College football 26. We got 16 people in this league. We all chose G5 schools with 1 star, no better than 1 star prestige to start. I started with Kent State, the worst team in the country, and in our 5th, 6th year, we're number 2 in the country. We're on a dreamlike run. Josh
Cribbs, legend at Kent State. Right?
James Harrison, Nick Saban, Gary Pinkel. Keep going down the list. Jack Lambert. Julian Edelman, and then for my time, Roosevelt Nix and Dree Archer and Luke Wallet and Brian Winters, and
I'm going to check that out. That's a lot of fun. Nick, we'll do this again much much sooner, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, there he goes, Nick Shook from NFL.com around the NFL. Kent State in the college football bouncing up. Love it. Make sure you're following Nick on all the places he said there. So I'm going through, and the mock drafts that you see, and like I said, until there's free agency, you don't know what you need in the draft, right? Like I said, if the Browns take Rasheed Walker, I wouldn't necessarily shy away from taking a tackle at 6, but it then says to me, okay, well, maybe I can wait to 24 and take another tackle there, a right tackle perhaps, or you do a trade, and then you kind of mix and match, and then you take a guard a little later. So it depends. Again, you want to get good players. Andrew Berry seemed very clear in his offseason press conference where he said they are going to invest significantly in the offense, and they have to. So if you get Caleb Downs, then you have, an absolute stud to go along with Grant Delpit. I think come Sundays we wouldn't hate it, but we also saw the Browns have the defensive player of the year in Myles Garrett and the rookie defensive player of the year in Carson Schlesinger and get 5 wins. I need points. Okay? I need points. A lot of them. So I love Caleb Downs, but then you better make sure you are addressing these other factors. And by the way, A.J. Brown rumors, stop with the trade. I'm seeing stuff, give the 24th pick overall to the Eagles. I don't want A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's a malcontent who's not happy with the Eagles who won the Super Bowl a year ago. He's going to be happy in Cleveland? You got Jalen Hurts, you're going to be happy with behind that offensive line? I don't think so. No, I don't want him, and I don't want Ayuk. No. Draft a freaking wide receiver, Andrew Berry. Now, I would take Carnell Tate at 6. But I would also say if you go another spot, then at 24, you get a Malachi Fields, who is, I think he's going to be pumped up post-combine. Notre Dame guy, big-bodied, 6'4". Reminds me of DK Metcalf a little bit. Or Denzel Boston type. Give me big dudes who run fast and catch the ball, please. Okay? Get me those. So there's lots of different options and situations. Fascinating time here. Nick, great to catch up with him over this time. Make sure, guys, you are subscribing to the channel. We're going to have tons of great draft stuff, free agency, get you all ready for this exciting Browns offseason. Subscribe, notifications on, and follow on socials at AndyMC81, at SickPodBrowns on X, Instagram, and TikTok, at AndyMC Sports. Big thanks to Nick Shook, to producer Jimmy. I'm Andy Mack. Till next time, go Browns!
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.